If you're a Ferrari fan, or honestly just an F1 fan in general, that first fire-up of the 2026 Ferrari engine should have stopped you in your tracks. That wasn't just another technical checkpoint quietly ticked off in Maranello. That sound was a message. It was Ferrari saying very clearly that the 2026 era isn't something they're reacting to anymore, it's something they're actively shaping. After months of whispers about delays, struggles, and internal pressure, hearing that power unit come to life changes the entire mood around the project. There's a reason this moment matters so much. Winter in Maranello is usually defined by silence, secrecy, and controlled leaks, but when that engine fired up, it shattered the idea that Ferrari was still stuck in the uncertainty phase. In Formula One terms, getting to a full system fire-up this early means you've moved past the most dangerous question of all, which is whether the thing even works. Once you cross that line, everything becomes about performance, optimization, and confidence. And confidence is something Ferrari desperately needs heading into 2026. What makes this even more significant is the context. The 2026 regulations are brutal. This isn't a small evolution of what we have now. It's a fundamental rethink of how power is delivered, managed, and controlled. You're talking about an electric system capable of producing nearly as much power as the combustion engine itself, all while running on fully sustainable fuel. That combination has broken plenty of simulations across the grid, so hearing Ferrari's engine run cleanly tells you their core architecture is solid. Not perfect, not finished, but fundamentally right. And let me ask you this. Be honest in the comments. When you heard that sound, did it actually make you feel more confident about Ferrari's future? Or are you still waiting to see proof on track? I'm genuinely curious where you land on that. This is also where the psychological side kicks in. Other teams are listening too. Mercedes, Red Bull, everyone. Early success like this doesn't win championships, but it absolutely applies pressure. If you're enjoying these deep dives into what's really happening behind the scenes, make sure you like the video and subscribe, because every new step toward 2026 is going to matter, and we're pushing hard toward 2,000 subscribers together. Because while that engine was screaming into life on the dyno, something just as important was happening on the human side of the garage, and that story might end up being even more decisive than the horsepower itself. That engine sound isn't just dramatic for the fans, it's a direct consequence of how extreme the 2026 regulations really are. To understand why Ferrari's fire-up is such a big deal, you have to zoom in on what this power unit is being asked to do. This isn't a case of adding a bit more battery or tweaking fuel flow. The electric motor, the MGUK, is now expected to deliver close to 500 horsepower on its own. That's not support power anymore. That's half the car's performance coming from electricity. What makes this especially challenging is what's missing. The MGUH is gone for 2026, which means engineers lose one of their most powerful tools for smoothing energy flow and controlling the turbo. Without it, the combustion engine has to be far more mechanically honest. That's why the sound coming out of Maranello feels raw, louder, and less filtered. You're hearing a V6 that isn't being electronically polished anymore, paired with an electric system that hits hard and fast. For fans, that's exciting. For engineers, it's borderline terrifying. And then there's the fuel. Running on 100% sustainable fuel completely changes how combustion behaves. The burn rate, pressure characteristics, and temperature profiles are all different, which means everything from piston design to vibration control has to be rethought. During a fire-up like this, engineers aren't just listening for a smooth idle. They're listening for harmonics. If the electric system and the engine aren't perfectly synchronized, vibrations can ripple through the drivetrain and literally tear components apart over time. The fact that Ferrari's unit ran clean this early suggests they've already solved some very deep, very painful problems. So when people say this fire-up is just noise, that misses the point entirely. Noise is data. Sound tells engineers whether the turbo is behaving, whether the crankshaft is stable, and whether energy deployment is fighting the combustion cycle or working with it. Ferrari didn't just prove the engine runs, they proved their integration philosophy works. And that's the hardest part of this entire regulation cycle. Let me throw this to you. Do you actually like the direction the 2026 engines are going? Louder and more aggressive? Or do you think Formula One is leaning too hard into electrical complexity? Drop your take in the comments, because this is one of those debates that's going to define the next decade of the sport. And if you enjoy breaking down the technical side without it turning into a textbook, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next as we push toward that 2,000 subscriber goal. Because while the engine represents Ferrari's hardware breakthrough, the next shift is all about people. And that story centers on Lewis Hamilton and a decision that quietly resets Ferrari's entire approach for 2026. While the engine was coming to life in Maranello, Ferrari was also making a decision that might be just as important for 2026, even though it didn't make nearly as much noise. Lewis Hamilton and Riccardo Adami are officially going their separate ways, and this isn't a dramatic fallout, but it is a very clear reset. If you watched Ferrari closely last season, you could feel that something wasn't quite clicking. Not wrong, not dysfunctional, just slightly out of sync in a way that matters at the very top level of Formula One. Riccardo Adami is a highly respected engineer. He was a stabilizing force during Sebastian Vettel's years and brought a calm, methodical approach to the garage. But Lewis operates differently. He needs more than data and instructions. He needs translation, anticipation, and near telepathic communication, especially when he's pushing a car at the absolute limit. In 2025, their relationship felt like two very intelligent people speaking slightly different dialects of the same language. Functional, but never effortless. What's important here is that Ferrari didn't push Adami out. They repositioned him, moving him into a senior role within the driver academy, and the previous cars program keeps his experience inside the team while clearing space for Lewis to start fresh. That tells you this decision wasn't emotional. It was surgical. Ferrari looked at the performance, the radio exchanges, the adaptation curve, and decided that sentiment couldn't outweigh optimization. And that aligns perfectly with Lewis's mindset right now. His comments about leaving behind old patterns and reshaping his environment weren't vague lifestyle reflections. In Formula One, that's code for removing friction wherever it exists. Lewis struggled to fully adapt to Ferrari's culture last season, and Ferrari struggled to adapt to the way Lewis processes feedback. Neither side failed, but neither side reached their ceiling together. So here's the big question for you. Was this change inevitable, or do you think Ferrari should have given that partnership more time to mature? Let me know in the comments, because this is one of those decisions that will look either visionary or premature in hindsight. And if you appreciate honest breakdowns like this, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are on, because this channel is built around connecting these dots as we move closer to 2026 and that 2,000 subscriber goal. Because now Ferrari has created a blank space next to Lewis in the cockpit, and filling that seat with the right voice might end up deciding whether this entire project succeeds or falls apart. That empty seat on the radio might not look dramatic from the outside, but in 2026, it could be the most important position in the entire team. The role of a race engineer is about to change more than at any point in modern Formula One, and that's why Ferrari's next decision here carries so much weight. This isn't just about chemistry anymore. It's about survival in a car that behaves more like a high-voltage laboratory than a traditional race machine. With energy deployment reaching unprecedented levels, the engineer becomes less of a tire whisperer and more of a real-time energy strategist. They'll be telling Lewis exactly when to deploy electrical power, when to harvest, and when to protect the system from overheating or destabilizing the car. Timing errors won't cost tenths, they'll cost positions. And in a car that's already going to be sensitive, nervous, and unpredictable, Even a 1% communication delay could leave Lewis completely exposed on the straights. That's why absolute trust is non-negotiable. Lewis needs someone who understands not just the numbers, but how he interprets feel, balance, and confidence. This is where Ferrari faces a fascinating choice. Do they promote from within, someone steeped in their systems but untested at this level? Or do they go outside and bring in a voice that already understands the Hamilton operating system? Both options carry risk, and both send very different messages about Ferrari's identity under Fred Vasseur. And let's not ignore the timing. Just as reports surfaced about positive conversations between Lewis and Adami, Ferrari quietly made the switch. That tells you everything you need to know about how this team is being run now. Vasseur isn't managing relationships, he's managing lap time. If the data says something isn't optimal, it changes. Full stop. That ruthless clarity hasn't always existed at Ferrari, and it's one of the strongest signs that this version of the team is different. Quick question for you. Would you rather see Ferrari promote a young, hungry engineer from inside the team, or hire an experienced outsider who already knows how to work with champions? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you're enjoying this behind-the-scenes look at how championships are really built, hit like and subscribe to help us reach that 2,000 subscriber milestone. Because when you zoom out, the engine fire-up and the engineer switch aren't separate stories at all. They're two parts of the same philosophy, and that brings us to the bigger picture Ferrari is trying to paint for 2026. When you step back and look at everything together, the picture becomes much clearer. Ferrari didn't just fire up a new engine and reshuffle a few names on an org chart. They made a statement about how they intend to win in 2026. This is performance over sentiment, execution over tradition, and clarity over comfort. Under Fred Vasseur, Ferrari is no longer waiting to see how the new regulations shake out. They're acting as if the championship will be decided by whoever aligns technology and people first. That 2026 power unit isn't just powerful, it's tightly packaged, efficient, and designed around a car concept that prioritizes low drag and aggressive energy deployment. Getting it to run cleanly this early suggests Ferrari has finally found balance between the aerodynamic and engine departments, something that has haunted them for years. Space inside that engine bay is priceless, and the fact that everything is already integrated tells you this project hasn't been stitched together at the last minute. It's been planned, argued over, and optimized from the ground up. The same thinking applies to the human side. Moving Riccardo Adami into the driver academy isn't a demotion, it's a download. Ferrari is taking decades of experience working with champions and embedding that mindset into the next generation. At the same time, they're giving Lewis Hamilton exactly what he asked for: a clean slate. Hardware and software, both reset for one final push. And that's what makes this moment feel different. Lewis knows the window for an 8th title isn't slowly closing anymore, it's slamming shut. His recent comments about restructuring his own environment reflect that urgency. Ferrari's response has been to match it, not with promises, but with action. The engine fire-up gives him belief in the machinery. The engineer change gives him control over the environment. Together, they form a calculated gamble that could redefine this era. So here's the question that really matters. Do you genuinely believe Ferrari can pull this off and win the 2026 championship, or does too much still have to go right? And one more. Is Lewis Hamilton still capable of delivering an 8th title if everything finally clicks? Let me know your answers in the comments, because this is where opinion really splits. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you're subscribed and the notifications are on. Every like and every subscription helps push us toward that 2,000 subscriber goal, and it tells me you want more of this kind of deep, connected analysis. The roar from Maranello wasn't just an engine coming to life. It was a giant waking up, electric, focused, and done with waiting. And based on what we've seen so far, Ferrari isn't hoping for a miracle anymore. Their engineering won.